conference will now be recorded.
All right, I think we're fired up, ready to go. We have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. It's at 9:30. So that's the first item of business on our agenda. The second item is opportunity for public comment. Are there any here who wish to make public comment this morning?
Is there anybody online who wishes to make comment?
No one present here, no one online. We'll move to item 3. It's an action item regarding approval of minutes from the February 18th, 2026 meeting.
Here, point of order.
Sir.
Where the minutes state Councilmember Michael Blomquist, while I was a council member in years past, it does change it to mayor. Throughout the document, it does refer to me as councilman.
We will do that, Mayor. Thank you. Anyone else have any additions or corrections to the minutes? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes with the necessary corrections, and one being specifically one being stated.
Motion approved. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Thank you, Dale Quigley. Appreciate you, sir. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 4, discussion and action item regarding approval of resolution 2026-04, recognizing April 2026 as National Distracted Driving Awareness Month. And that is Ms. Janke.
Thank you, sir. In 2024, KTMPO region had 397 crashes attributed to distracted driving, with 4 fatalities and 10 serious injuries. As we look at our crash data, we see that the average age is around 21, and it is a male driver. And can you go to the next slide, please? I believe on the next slide, there is, it shows the date of that is a Friday. So 87 crashes happened on Friday with a male average of 21 years of age. So on our Distracted Driving Awareness Month and throughout the balance of 2026, our campaign is going to be gearing towards that demographic. And we have a strategic plan to reach out to football coaches in the area, to include even going a little bit outside of the KTMPO boundary over to Hamilton, since they made it to nationals or Texas finals. I'm sorry, I'm not a sports fan, so I don't know the right terminology, but reaching out to them and utilizing some male leaders in our community, coaches, to help reduce those statistics.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I did have a question. What was the major distraction? I'm assuming cell phones, or do you know?
I don't think it tells us on that, on the crash data. Jason, would you happen to know? Can you explain a little bit?
Sometimes it depends on how the officer codes it in. They can either say distraction in vehicle, which could be any number of things. Sometimes it will say cell phone related, or it'll say driver inattention, which could all kind of have the same outcome. Is that you don't pay attention, you're not reacting in time. It doesn't always give you the cut. Sometimes you can get the crash report and read the narrative, and it'll say, you know, the cat on the way to the vet got off the carrier and went running mud. So, you know, anything that can happen that takes your attention away from driving.
And so our goal, did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so our goal is to reduce that distracted driving incident throughout our region, but also throughout the Sitcom region. And so we're looking for approval of the resolution 2026-04 to recognize April 2026 as National Distracted Driving Awareness Month.
Resolution is in your packet. Has everybody reviewed it? I'd like to make a motion. Mayor Blomquist. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Bobby Whitson. I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution 2026-04, recognizing April 2026 as National Distracted Driving Awareness Month. Second. Motion second. Mayor Rob Adams. I have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5, discussion action item regarding approval amendments to the fiscal year 26-27 Unified Planning Work Program for Travel Demand Model Demographics and Network. This is the super.
Good morning. We have a travel demand model update that is underway, and we need to shift funds within our budget to the appropriate line items. There is no overall program or budget change to the work program other than shifting of these funds. The amendment would be to request $28,178 from Task 4 to Task 4.2 of FY26 and $22,906 from Task 3 of FY27 to Task 4 of 2026.
Any questions, comments? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the recommended transfer in UPWP.
Move to approve as presented by Mayor Adams. Second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Trudell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 6, discussion item regarding the Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success Act. Katie and Ryan.
Yeah, we have Katie and Ryan from AMPO that are going to provide a brief overview of the Basics Act. They did ask how long they had. I said, please try for 15 or 20 minutes, but this is a very important topic. So if they go over, or if we have a lot of questions, they're prepared to stay and ask those questions until we're done, I believe. So with that, I'll welcome Katie and Ryan. We just saw them last week, so it's good to see them again. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And can y'all hear us okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. And hi, everyone. It's great to be with you all virtually today. Thank you so much to you, Ryan, for the invitation. Like you said, I was lucky enough to see him last week. And also thank you to all of you for all the work that you do across your communities every day. So as Ryan said, I'm Katie Economou. I'm the Legislative Director at AMPO, and I'm also joined by Ryan Coady, our Legislative Associate. So we're going to walk through a couple slides on the Federal Transportation Reauthorization Bill and the new Basics Act marker bill, and then we'll have questions at the end. So with that, I'm going to kick it to Ryan to kick us off with a quick reauthorization overview and 101.
Great. Thanks, Katie. And also thank you for having us, guys. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about reauthorization, but we're going to provide just a very quick overview of what reauthorization is, and then where this Basics Act falls into this conversation in general. So reauthorization is the process where federal transportation funding and policy are authorized. This process happens every 5 to 6 years, with the most recent iteration being the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, from 2021. This bill is set to expire on September 30th of this year. So Congress is already well on the way to working on the next version of the bill. The main source through which federal transportation funding flows is through the Highway Trust Fund, and specifically its highway and mass transit accounts. And the main committees in Congress that will be working on this next bill include the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, or House T&I, who work on the majority of the House version of the bill. And on the Senate side, it's divided between 3 committees, with the Senate Environment and Public Works, or EPW, committee handling the highway portion of the bill and a majority of the bill, and provisions like transit being by the Senate Banking Committee, and general safety and research being under the jurisdiction of the Senate Commerce Committee. And you can go to the next slide. Great, thanks. So over time, there's been many iterations of the surface bill, with each one introducing different funding levels and provisions. Very similarly, since MPOs were first established in the 1960s, MPOs have gained a greater role in our communities and more responsibilities over time. Some key eras include the 1970s, where Congress dedicated a portion of highway funding to MPOs, the 1990s, where there's a greater emphasis on multimodalism, and then, of course, IIJA introduced, in terms of funding, the greatest increase in federal transportation funding. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Specifically, IIJA invested $567 billion in surface transportation, with 24% of that being available through discretionary funding, which was available to regions, locals, and of course MPOs. To show just how significant of an increase in funding this was, we can compare discretionary funding from the FAST Act, which was the previous iteration of the bill, which had $5.5 billion available through discretionary funding, as compared to the $28 billion in IIJA discretionary funding. And to kind of talk about where the Basics Act falls into this general conversation of reauthorization, I'll pass it on back to Katie.
Thank you, Ryan, and you can bump to perfect. So zooming out for a second, as Ryan mentioned, Congress is actively working on reauthorization. The IIJA expires at the end of fiscal year 26, and we're expecting to see legislative text begin circulating sometime this spring, potentially early April. And just to flag, the Basics Act is not a standalone effort. It's the Local Officials in Transportation, or LOT Coalition's marker bill for reauthorization. And basically what that means is, it signals to Congress what local and regional governments across the country believe should be included in the next surface transportation reauthorization bill. So part of the Basics Act could be included in the final reauthorization, or all of it, but nothing's guaranteed. So a marker bill is pretty much how you influence the structure of the final larger reauthorization bill. So you introduce a marker, you build support, and then you can demonstrate alignment to help get that passed. And the Basics Act has been introduced already bipartisanly in the House of Representatives by Kristen McDonald-Rivet from Michigan and Representative Rob Bresnahan from Pennsylvania, who are both on the T&I committee. But introduction is just the first step here. Still definitely needs support from Congress and from all of our local and regional partners across the US. So this is a huge moment when MPO board and local official engagement really matters. If you could go back one slide. Thank you. So I also want to flag some of the themes that we're already hearing from Congress. Chairman Graves on the House T&I committee has been pretty clear for his vision on the next bill. He said that in the next reauthorization, Congress is going to go, quote, back to basics. That's the namesake of the bill. That means that there could be less discretionary grant programs, consolidating certain discretionary grant programs and shifting that into formula. Likely no major new programs coming about, more of a focus on safety, more of a focus on roads and bridges, so core infrastructure, and also a big focus on streamlining project delivery and permitting. But here's kind of where the risk comes into play. If Congress shifts funding from discretionary programs like SS4A or RAISE or things you've seen in previous rounds back into formula programs, but doesn't require suballocation or protect local and regional access, local governments and regions could lose access to funding that was once available under the IIJA. So that's kind of the structural issue we're trying to get ahead of in the Basics Act, and I'll touch more on that in a second. You can hop to the next slide. Thank you. So at this point, you're probably wondering, what is the Basics Act? So first, it supports cities, counties, RTPOs, MPOs, and states and regions nationwide. It fixes bridges based on condition and ownership. It delivers local and regional priority projects faster. It targets safety dollars to high-risk roads, strengthens accountability and local project selection. It builds planning capacity for MPOs and also rural regions, and it also protects local and regional dollars from being transferred away. Second big piece, it has major member input. It reflects the lived experience from MPOs and local governments navigating the IIJA and also navigating discretionary programs. Third big piece, it includes all of AMPO's core legislative priorities. So things like planning fund modernization, suballocation protections, strengthening project selection, and preparing MPOs for the future. And final big thing to flag here, it's definitely unified. AMPO, National Association of Regional Councils, National League of Cities, U.S. Conference of Mayors, National Association of Development Organizations representing RTPOs in rural areas, and also NACO representing counties are all aligned on this bill, and we've come together to support this. And that unity is pretty important because when Congress sees alignment across cities, counties, MPOs, regions, it makes our case much stronger. And you can.
Hey, Katie, can you give us just a second? We're having some technical issues.
Absolutely. I hope it's not on. Yeah.
Oh, the projector? Oh. We don't have a way to just.
For now.
All right, Katie, can you hear us now? All right, we
Yep,
have
I can hear.
one mic that's acting really, really weird, so we're trying to isolate that. So thank you.
No worries at all. As you know, I'm the queen of technical difficulties on Zoom calls, so no issues. Okay, where were we? You can hop to the next slide. Thank you. Perfect. So that kind of leads us to the conversation of why do we need the Basics Act? Regions and local governments plan for, own, and maintain the transportation system that people use and rely on every single day. So these are the roads that folks take to work, school, the doctor, and businesses. They're also the first and last miles that connect freight corridors to national supply chains. So our big message here is local roads are nationally significant. And if you think about it, if one piece of the system fails, the whole system fails. So this is a really important focus in the bill. Local governments own 43% of the federal aid highway system and 75% of all US road miles, which is a massive amount. And local governments also own about half of all public bridges in the US. But what we're seeing is despite this level of responsibility and ownership, regions and locals receive only about 16% of federal aid highway funding. So that's a major structural imbalance. And the system is asking locals to carry the largest share of maintenance, safety, operations, and performance responsibility without a dedicated funding source that reflects how that network is actually owned and managed. And this issue shows up in conditions that you all see on the ground in bridges, pavement quality, safety outcomes in your community. And we know that locally owned bridges are also twice as likely to be in poor condition as state-owned bridges. We see a similar pattern too on arterial roadways. About half of all locally owned arterials are in poor condition compared to just 7% of similar state-owned roads. On the safety side too, we know that 85% of roadway fatalities occur off the interstate. So we think that if the funding system remains misaligned with ownership and responsibility, local asset conditions and safety outcomes are going to continue to trend in the wrong direction. So a major goal driving the Basics Act is to make sure that there's dedicated suballocated funding for regions and locals to tackle those issues like safety, bridge condition, infrastructure conditions more broadly. I'm going to hop to the next slide there. Thank you. So under the IIJA, roughly 25% of total federal transportation funding flowed through a mix of formula and discretionary programs. Many MPOs and local governments access funding through competitive grant programs or those discretionary programs. So if Congress reduces discretionary funding or shifts that money into formula without suballocation protections, access could shrink dramatically for local and regional partners. So then the question becomes, how do we preserve local and regional access in the next reauthorization bill? And that's what the Basics Act is designed to answer. You can jump to the next slide there. Thank you. Perfect. So a little bit on the details, we'll dig more into it in a second, but at a high level, the bill increases and modernizes planning funds to support the full project life cycle. It gives planning funds that MPOs use to support local governments and support project readiness a bump up to 2.5% of the overall program. Also for planning, it eliminates the local match requirement. It allows MPOs the option to become direct recipients of planning funds, and it expands eligible uses of planning funds. The bill also increases Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, or STBG funding, which we know is the most flexible program and would go to support states, MPOs, and locals. It also increases safety funding through the Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP, a lot of acronyms here, bear with me, with a dedicated 25% suballocation share for local and regional partners. It would also continue and strengthen the Bridge Formula program from the IIJA, also with a 25% suballocation to help repair locally owned bridges and also continue supporting state-owned bridges as well. It also reinforces NPO project selection, so projects you also left in the tip move forward as intended by Congress, and it improves transparency through access to federal systems like FEMAS, so folks can understand where projects are in the obligation process. It also protects suballocated funds from being transferred away and provides dedicated support and funding for rural transportation planning organizations, or RTPOs. So these changes all build on programs that already exist today. They're just more consistent and predictable under basics to help support local and regional partners. You can jump to the next slide. Thank you. And I also want to pause here and clarify how the funding works under basics, because this is where there's been a lot of confusion. States receive federal transportation funding across several programs, and some of that funding is then suballocated to NPOs and local governments, so it reaches that local level. The Basics Act adjusts how some of that funding is distributed, so it changes the flow, but it does not reduce overall state funding. The bill is about strengthening the entire system for states, NPOs, and local partners. And the bill also relies on several funding assumptions, which I'll touch more on in a second, but you can jump to the next slide. Thank you. So more specifically, the bill shifts a small portion of funding over from more rigid programs like NHPP, or the National Highway Performance Program, into programs that are more flexible or safety focused and accessible. So those are programs like STBG, Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, and HSIP, the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And that shift also reflects what many states are already doing in practice with NHPP transfers. We've also heard from many states that they prefer to work through STBG due to its flexibility. And these programs already support states, and funding would be shifted to the top line, not just the suballocation portion. So the goal is to direct more funding into programs that can be better address real world needs across levels, and making sure that the whole system, both interstate and off the interstate, those local roads, is strong. You can jump to the next slide. And under the Basics Act, both state and local formula funding increases by $5 billion respectively. And this doesn't really require new money, and it doesn't reduce funding for states at all. It actually increases it. It comes back to what Congress is signaling for that next reauthorization bill. You can jump to the next slide. So as mentioned, it's important to note that it's a forward-looking proposal. The Basics Act reflects these assumptions that we just discussed about what the next reauthorization could look like based on signals that Congress and leadership is saying. That's particularly around funding levels. We believe the Highway Trust Fund will be around the 80 billion mark, and inflation adjustments, which are typical in every reauth bill, probably around the 2% mark, so 2 billion. And the consolidation of discretionary programs. We know many discretionary programs are going to be shifted to formula in the next bill, and the Basics Act takes that into account by assuming that grant programs that were accessible to locals and regions will be channeled through formula programs that include suballocation to locals to retain access. So the bill is really designed to operate within the direction Congress is already signaling, not really reinventing the wheel anywhere. And jump to the next one. I promise we're almost done with the funding stuff. So what happens from here? At a high level for funding, state funding increases, 5 billion increase in formula. Local guaranteed funding increases, 5 billion there as well in formula. Planning funds become a larger share of the program at 2.5%, and more funding flows through flexible and safety focused programs, so STBG and HSIP with that suballocation. The overall takeaway is that the system is strengthened across the board under this proposal. And that's enough on funding. We can get to the fun part of the policy changes. So I'll kick it to Ryan to discuss the bits there and narrow in a bit more.
Great. Thanks, Katie. As Katie kind of talked about already, besides STBG increasing generally, The bill would also make changes to how STBG obligation works. Specifically, the bill would broaden the consultation requirements for areas with populations less than 50,000 and those not represented by a rural transportation planning organization, or RTPO. Specifically, states would have to consult local governments, organizations representing local governments, or locally elected officials when obligating STBG funding. And you can head to the next slide as well. Thank you. For the bridge program, the Basics Act would continue the bridge program that was under IIJA, but move it into the core formula programs and rename it to the Strengthening Bridge Formula Program. Some key characteristics of this would be a funding level of $5.5 billion per year from 2027 to 2031, with a minimum funding level of $45 million per year to a state. Some other key characteristics include that there will be a 100% federal cost share for off-system bridges, as well as 25% sub-allocation, already kind of based on how STBG works with their population sub-allocation. And you can go to the next slide. Thank you. HSIP, or safety funding, would work very similarly with a 25% sub-allocation, also based on how STBG currently works with population sub-allocation. Something critical with the Basics Act and how it works with HSIP is that it would also enhance project selection requirements, ensuring that projects on TIPs, or those selected in cooperation with RTPOs or with consultation with local governments, are prioritized. And something I really want to emphasize is that the Basics Act would not lead to a decrease in state safety funding. HSIP funding would increase overall, allowing the states to have a greater amount of safety funding, as well as through sub-allocation, locals would have a larger share as well. You can go to the next slide. Great, thanks. And then before I pass it back to Katie to talk a little bit more about planning, another thing I would like to touch on is the transferability provisions within the Basics Act. The Basics Act would expand transferability exemptions to sub-allocated funding under HSIP, Carbon Reduction Program, or CRP, and the new Bridge Formula Program, reflecting sort of the system that exists already for STBG and PL funds. Additionally, if HSIP dollars were to be transferred by states, they would first have to be available competitively to local governments, ensuring that they can have access to those safety funds. And then lastly, the Basics Act would also reaffirm that any sub-allocated funding under STBG, HSIP, or CRP and the Bridge Formula Program are obligated to projects that were locally selected or locally selected by regions. And I'll pass it back to Katie, who will talk a little bit more about PL funding.
Thanks so much, Ryan. And you can hop to that next slide. So on planning, currently PL funding or planning funding is less than 0.5% of total funding, and is currently reflected as a fixed dollar amount at about $470 million. The share of PL relative to the entire program has been pretty stagnant over the past 30 years, despite MPO responsibilities increasing, despite inflation rising, despite how much more complex the transportation landscape has become too. So under the Basics Act, PL would shift to a percentage and be set at 2.5% of the overall program. Along with that PL increase, the Basics Act would eliminate the local match requirement on PL funds, which we know is a major barrier for smaller and rural areas. And another issue as well, many regions are not able to raise revenue to support match, so we think this will be very helpful. The bill also creates a direct recipient option for MPOs through an opt-in structure, so long as MPOs demonstrate capacity. We've heard from many MPOs that the current state pass-through process can create major delays. This program or this proposal provides flexibility there. So where the existing system works well, where relationships are good, it can continue. But where it creates bottlenecks and slowdowns, there's another option to move faster. It also grants access to FEMIS, which is the system that shows all the funds for the projects and how it comes down. So regions and local partners can better track where projects stand in terms of funding, obligation, and execution. I also want to flag that for all of these provisions, it's mirrored between the FHWA, the federal highways, and the FTA titles, federal transit titles. So it applies across the board to the Transit 5303 funds as well. But why does this matter? It's because you can't build good projects without good planning. And if it doesn't get planned, it doesn't get built. And we know strong planning reduces delays up front. It builds consensus early, and it makes sure that federal dollars are invested wisely. We also know that planning funds go to support local governments with data help, technical assistance, and just across the board capacity help. So if Congress wants to deliver on those themes for faster project delivery, better safety outcomes, stronger accountability, planning capacity is the foundation there. And this bill also expands eligible uses of planning funds to better reflect the full project lifecycle. It would allow for activities like preliminary design, project scoping, data improvements, modeling, transportation studies tied to economic development. These are all practical tools that help projects move faster and reduce complications later in the process. I also want to flag most of these things should technically be eligible under current law, but we know that sometimes the Federal Highways Division offices or Federal Transit Administration regional offices might not currently interpret this evenly across all jurisdictions. We've heard this nationwide, so that's another reason we wanted to add that clarification. You can hop to the next one. So in this bill as well, we also address rural planning. Right now, many RTPOs or rural transportation planning organizations, they operate with limited formal funding structures despite doing transportation related work. So the Basics Act would create a designated formula program for RTPOs. That would be a separate source than the MPO planning funds. It would provide $300,000 annually. It would also establish a competitive grant program for non-designated regions. So if folks wanted to stand up an RTPO in an area, they could compete for funds to be able to go through that process too. And it would also provide a 100% federal cost share, so eliminating the match there too. We think this will strengthen regional planning capacity across the entire country, not just metropolitan areas. And you can, perfect. So there's been a few common questions about the bill, and I want to address those briefly. I feel like Ryan and I have probably said this 30 times throughout this call, and it's because it's a major misconception. The bill does not reduce state funding. Under a Basics Act, state funding increases by $5 billion in formula funds. Also, the Basics Act is not a dramatic overhaul or shift in federal policy. It builds on that existing framework from IIJA, and also it's designed to improve project delivery, not slow it. It also recognizes that while coordination works well in some places, there are still structural challenges in others. So this provides the tools to help address that and continue building those strong relationships. You can hop to the next slide. Thank you. So what can regions do? On the education side for MPOs, there's a couple different ways you can support the bill, and also on the local side as well. So first, local elected officials, many of you here in this room, are super strong messengers and can carry major weight on Capitol Hill. MPOs cannot lobby, but they can educate on how the Basics Act could improve outcomes in their region. Local elected officials, on the other hand, are able to more directly tap in and offer their support. The LOT Coalition, or Local Officials and Transportation Coalition, has an advocacy toolkit and is geared towards local and regional leaders with resources that local electeds can tap into to give their support. We also have a template for MPO board members to send letters of support and draft resolutions, so be sure to check that out too. We have a QR code on the next slide. If you want to switch to that slide too, I can talk through the rest. Second big thing for MPOs, you can provide congressional briefings or through that education lens on how the Basics Act would improve outcomes in your region. Third big piece, it's super helpful to coordinate regionally, work with your cities, counties, towns, local chambers of commerce, and other regional partners. This can be done through things like a unified sign-on letter across jurisdictions. That can be very powerful. Other big piece, engage your state DOT. Having conversations with your state to make sure they understand the issues behind the bill is super important. Final big pieces, participate in fly-ins, come visit us in DC. We're super happy to help coordinate and join meetings with your delegation, provide support there. And final thought would be invite your members of Congress to the district, organize a regional roundtable, talk about transportation issues in your area, give a tour, it's really, really impactful for them to see what's happening on the ground. And throughout all of this too, use data, local stories, share safety stats, bridge condition data, project backlogs that you're facing, and examples of strong regional coordination. Congressional offices typically respond pretty well to specific impacts in their district or state. For MPOs here, the focus is on coordination education. Their role as regional conveners is super helpful in supporting this bill. So thank you. And with that QR code up in the top right, we have the toolkit as mentioned to make this all easy. It includes templates, talking points, one-pagers, board letters, so you don't really have to reinvent anything. You can use the materials, customize it, and share your stories. And also always feel free to reach out to me and Ryan directly if you ever need support. I'll share my email as well, but we're here to help. And I know that was a lot. We can jump to Q&A if there's time for it. And I'm also happy to follow up over email with responding to any questions.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Katie?
Jason?
Could you go back to one of the early slides where you talk about the funding split with states and local communities, and that the local communities have more roads but don't get the money? This is where I'm trying to wrap my head around, and maybe it's different with other state DOTs, but that's the one right there. So is that saying there are other local government communities that are expected to build and maintain state facilities?
No, so this graphic right here, just to clarify, so local governments own about 75% of all public road miles and 43% of the federal aid highway system. Also, 34% of all vehicle miles traveled are on local roads. That split that's shown on the right-hand side, the 16 to 84%, that's the currently like how much on average comes down to those local communities. So this visual is just kind of showing the discrepancy between that amount of ownership and level of responsibility tied to maintaining those local roads in comparison to how much funding actually comes through to local and regional partners. And the majority of that 16% is through suballocation. This is just federal funding though. This is not state funding.
And I think that was the point you made at the end with the FAQs. I think we do have a good partnership and collaboration with TxDOT, because even though it doesn't maybe come to the local governments, the money's still spent in our communities. All the FMs, US highways, all that, it is still being spent in our communities. The local governments don't necessarily have control of it, which, I mean, that's a conversation we could have, whether that's a policy statement or that's more how we go through our project selection once this formula funding comes down. And that was my question at TAC. So the other question I have is, policy's great, love it, but how does it work? Boots on the ground. Where do we see that money allocated? Local governments, are they going to coordinate directly with the state? Is it still through the MPO process that we have now? And we just add that as another funding source, and we balance that and we go through our selection process?
So those are really great questions. To the first one as well, with the great partnership between TxDOT and communities, that's something we definitely want to amplify and continue building on. We know it doesn't work great in other places as well. So this bill is kind of just trying to push more consistency there. And yeah, with the project selection requirements, we'll see in some places like, yes, the state might spend money in a local community, but sometimes it might not follow those projects that were selected on the MPO tip or prioritized by our TPOs. So this bill's trying to create some more consistency there. And then to the second part of the question as well, how would it work boots on the ground? For areas that are covered by an MPO, so above that 50,000 population threshold, for the HTIP fund, those safety funds, STBG would be the same thing. And the bridge formula program, that's where those suballocations happen to provide more access. It would follow the typical MPO process for how you might select STBG projects. So normal project selection in your area, same shtick, just a bit more funding to move around there and more dedicated funds for safety and bridge.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
So that That 85, it was, the 8416 was from a Brookings report a couple of years ago across the country. And all MPOs aren't created equally. I think ours is one of the best ones in Texas, let alone in the AMPO membership. But also, this bill promotes, brings back discretionary funding, like the RAISE grant and a few others. But, you know, you saw some of the discussion where they're trying to get rid of some of that, and that allows direct funding to the cities without taking funding away from the city.
I can touch on that piece a little bit as well. So the Lot Coalition in this bill certainly does not advocate for getting rid of any discretionary funds. The bill more so kind of reads the tea leaves of the conversations that are coming off of Capitol Hill. We know that Chairman Graves of the House T&I Committee, he's interested in consolidating some of those programs and moving them back into formula programs because in his view, like that's the greatest way to achieve efficiency. And since they're kind of like holding the pen right now for that majority bill and they've signified that it's going to be a major priority, the Basics Act is kind of like a stopgap to make sure that local dollars are still coming down in a way in case those discretionary programs go away. So that's where a lot of the funding assumptions come from too with the growth. If those programs that were once accessible competitively to local governments like RAISE and SS4A were to be dumped into a formula, what the Basics Act is signaling is that we still need to maintain access there for local and regional governments. And that should be put into programs that are accessible for locals and regions and suballocated down that way.
Okay, if I may, the other bill that regarding the grants, and this bill and that bill also calls for removing some of the unnecessary bureaucratic stuff that we have to go through. So that bill with this among 6 other bills is some of the ones we advocated last week, and the AMPO, NLC advocated last week, and AMPO, and the county the previous 2 weeks ago. So that's if this bill and the grant bill go, I think that would help us. So I mean, it doesn't remove some of the environmental requirements, but all the additional things that we've all complained about just to get the money to us, either from the state or through the state or directly from the federal government or from the MPO would help.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's something we definitely promote for the Lot Coalition and also AMPO is getting rid of some of those barriers that we know local governments and regions face generally when going through the federal funding process, all the red tape that's tied to that. So that's something we're definitely supportive of. In the Basics Act, there's nothing super direct on it aside from the streamlining measures that we're trying to achieve through the planning pieces. Like adding more planning funds, we think that will majorly streamline the process, cut down time on environmental review, deliver project readiness faster for local communities. But certainly the Lot Coalition does advocate for making the process as easy but still safe and reliable for local governments to move through the federal funding process and streamline there.
You have questions, comments? Katie, Ryan, thank you all. Their contact information, their emails are up on the screen now if you want to get those right quick. Also in your packets, if you've not noticed yet, there are format letters that if you want to send letters to representatives to let them know you want to support this. Certainly you or your organizations can do this. If you have opportunity to get to Washington, D.C. over the next week or two, then you might sit and try to arm wrestle with 1 or 2 representatives and convince them to support this basic. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll let y'all go. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us again.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all y'all are doing on the ground. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Item number 7, discussion item regarding amendments to the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Callie.
All right, so we are needing to make amendments to our 25-year planning document, which is the 2050 MTP. We will be making amendments to both the short range portion of the MTP listing and the long range. The short range projects that we will be amending are going to be in line with our FY 27 to 30 TIP preparation. So we'll be adding 18 new highway projects and 28 new Hill Country Transit projects or transit projects. But the amendments we'll be making to the long range portion include adding 2 projects, the FM 93 project and the Chaparral Road Phase 2 project. Both of these projects should have been included in the original project call, but I believe for the FM 93, it was just not submitted again, so we just need to include it now, just speaking with TxDOT. And then for Chaparral Road Phase 2, it looks like we instead swapped that project for Chaparral Road Phase 1. So we're adding that in as well. So that'll be going into the long range portion just in preparation for future UTPs. And then at the request of Belton, we will be deleting 3 highway projects from the long range MTP listing. These other 3 projects will be wrapped up into a larger project that is happening in Belton. There will also be administrative amendments that we're making to the long range portion of the MTP, where we're just moving these projects up into the UTP out years. So it'll be FY 31 through 36, and we're putting those into that portion of the MTP. That way, whenever we have future UTP amendments, we'll be able to include those more easily for future funding. And those are the big amendments for this, and I could get into the transit projects in the next amendment, but does anyone have any questions about the long range portion right now? And we'll be bringing this all to you again in May for final approval.
Yeah, I noticed in the packet on your maps on Chaparral Road, the maps and the descriptions on here don't quite match.
Okay, yeah, I will look into that and make sure that that's corrected. Let me see.
And the page numbers are kind of superimposed.
Yes,
It looks like
yes.
52 to me, but I know it's not that high a number. On project name Chaparral Road Phase B. And the other one's project name Chaparral Road Phase 3A.
Yes, yes, I'll look into that and make sure that that's all correct in there, but that might just be an administrative error. But as far as that, if not, I can move on to the TIP project if you'd like to.
I just want to bring you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Any other questions on item 7? Okay, item number 8 is a discussion item regarding the draft fiscal year 27-30 transportation improvement program.
Okay, so yes, we'll be, this is our new TIP. So the TIP is our 4-year planning document that we update every 2 years. So we will be adding 28 new transit projects, and then we will be adding 18 highway projects. 3 of those projects are completely new to our TIP, so they were not included in the FY 25 to 28 TIP. The rest of the projects are being carried forward from the FY 25 to 28 TIP just due to their let dates, and there are a few let date changes and limit and scope changes within these amendments as well, and those are all within your packet. We also will be adding regionally significant projects, and we'll be reaching out to our cities to get a list of those. We need to have that as a portion of our TIP, just as required by TxDOT and the TIP team. So we will be reaching out to get that so we can include that as an appendix within our TIP. And then we also have created a digital map for all of these projects that are going to be added, specifically the highway projects. And I just wanted to hand that over to Tay really quick to talk about that.
Yeah, so this is our TIP digital map. If you guys want to go ahead and scan the QR code, it should take you straight to the map for you to play around in. I'm also going to have a little demo. Just give me 1 second to set that up. All right, and this is what it'll look like when you open it. It's just a little digital map that has all of our all the cities within the KTMPO region colored. They're all little colored. We also have schools and like attraction generators, traffic generators, and also when you go towards Fort Hood, you'll see that we have the gates marked. They're the little blue cities on here. And they look like this. So when you click on it, I'm assuming this will say Skywalk Field as like that special generator right there. You gotta click through a little bit. But yeah, Scarlet Field. So we have those in our schools up alongside our TIP projects. So you can go in, play around, zoom in, like that Chaparral project we were talking about a little bit earlier. Right here. This is the Chaparral project. When you click on the tip line, click through, it will take you to it. It will tell you the name, the project ID that we have for it, so K13-13A. And you scroll through, it says the title of the project description, the limits to and from, the length, and then the fiscal year, its let year for it. There will be changes coming. We're going to be adding more data to it. So if it doesn't look the same in a couple of days, just know it's still all the same data. We're just basically adding and refining. But yeah, it's there for you guys to play around in. If you guys see any errors, just reach back out to me. We can make those fixes pretty fast. And if you have any questions about the map or how to use the map, just let me know.
And we created this map in preparation for our public engagement period started yesterday, so we'll be taking this up for the public to be able to review as well. That'll also include the other MPP projects that are being amended. And for that portion, I can hand it over to Anita.
Thank you so much. Inside of your packet is a public involvement plan, and that's narrated in public-facing language. So we're going to be discussing the who, what, why, where, when, and how of public engagement. And as we move forward, we're going to be we have paper maps, PDFs, but this digital map is really going to be our ability to communicate the changes that are happening within our region digitally. And it'll be able to go places that we cannot go for public meetings. We are working on 2 public meetings. One is in Coppers Cove. It will be held Wednesday, April the 1st between 12 and 3. And then I'm currently working with Christina and Andrew to host a meeting over by the Chaparral Road High School, or maybe in the high school or the middle school, to address the Chaparral Road. If you think that there is a project on this list that has a high level of contention, then reach out to us and we can also help facilitate a public meeting in your community as well. We'll lead that process with your support. Oh, that's okay. The schedule ends on the public comment period ends April 27th, and then it'll move forward for approval at the May 6th and 20th meetings, and then Callie can take it from here.
Yeah, we'll have
process.
we'll have the final submittal of the entire tip to TxDOT by June 1st. But of course, we'll bring it to you before we do all of that and get your approval. I mean, I think, yeah, that's about it for what our plan is right now, and if anyone has any further questions.
Can I add one more thing about the public involvement piece? We've been pushing out a lot of surveys recently. So on this particular amendment, we're going to try to pull things back a little bit and just educate the public using the digital map, some public-facing language, and then we're just going to ask them to either like the post with the thumbs up or share an emoji if they're opposed of it. And so that way they don't have to do multiple clicks. And just to shake things up a little bit and see if we can re-engage our public. Thank you.
Comments or questions? All right, moving along then to discussion item number 9 regarding KTMPO Federal Certification Review.
All right, this is pages 108 through 130 in your packet. If you have a printed packet, you can read page 109 very, very nicely. Some of you, but the rest of the pages are messed up. As we've said, I don't know what happened to the page numbers. But as we've referenced before, our federal certification review that's required every 4 years for the MPO will be happening next month. They will be here. The agenda is in your packet, I believe, and on the screen. They will be here. They will be conducting interviews with a few elected officials. They will attend the policy board meeting, and then we will be meeting with them for the remainder of the day and half of the next day, so that they can ensure that We are in compliance. As I referenced before, they don't have an interest in saying that's a bad MPO and kicking us and shaming us. They're really interested in showing us and explaining how we could possibly improve processes or use some of our processes to inform other MPOs on possibly some best practices. This will be a collaborative conversation. With that, I'm going to actually, there's this slide right here I'm not familiar with, so I'm going to hand it over to Kendra, Anita,
Yes.
to discuss this slide right here.
I slipped that in there because I thought it was really important. We posted the FCR on our social media probably like about a week ago. And it just shows the strong community partnership that we really have with you all. Because these, the way that this is trending is because of your shares and what you do for us. And so we want to thank you for the trust that you've invested in our work here. And even though the KPIs, we wanted folks to fill out the survey. And that was very, very low. 2 folks filled out the survey. But if you look at our partnership with our stakeholders, our allies, you all who fill this room, it's very strong. You can see that blue line, that's this post, it is trending way above our regular content. And that's because y'all shared it. It shows 0 shares, but that's not really accurate. There were several shares and 20 clicks. So people were interested in the work, they're interested in what's happening in their community. They just didn't take that next step to click the survey. So thank you so very much for your investment in our work.
I know we do have the MPO website does have a tab specifically for the FCR. If you're interested, I encourage all of you to check out that tab. We will be having a public meeting the night of the 15th. I, of course, invite all of you, spread the word, please. We are trying to get a good list of stakeholders. Staff are working with everybody to have, so we can have a good stakeholder list for the open house and roundtable meeting with the federal highways. Anita's been really great at getting the message out. And talking with federal highways yesterday, it was apparent that there's not a big desire for, the public doesn't really have an interest in the planning activities. They really have an interest in when projects are up for construction. That's when the public gets involved. But I think Anita and staff are doing a great job of sharing the message of the importance of planning. So we may actually be one of the first MPOs to ever have anybody from the public attend the roundtable. I'm just not sure yet. Hopeful, but who knows? You know, last time I think a few people showed up from the public, but they weren't here for the planning. When they found out it wasn't project based, they were like, "We're out of here, bye." So hopefully we can use this to our advantage to educate the public. That being said, I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
We'll be sending out an invitation to this event this afternoon or first thing tomorrow. There is a reservation link. Federal Highways is asking for an RSVP list no later than Tuesday of next week. So if you are able to attend this public engagement, we will provide a meal for you from 5 to 6. It'll be a boxed meal. I don't know how delicious it'll be, but it'll be worth the $5 that we're spending. And we do request that you RSVP so that we can submit that list of participants to Federal Highways.
All right. Other questions, comments? Item number 10, discussion item regarding updates to the Regional Active Transportation Plan. Anita.
Thank you, sir. We are excited. We're on the downhill slide of completing this written plan. The public comment period ends April 13th of 2026. You can use the QR code to read about the plan, go to the digital map. We're getting great at using our digital maps. Do you mind going to the next slide, please? And once again, I want to just express our appreciation for your trust in the plans that we put out to the public. This particular plan here had 12 shares, 88 link clicks, and 18 reactions. And once again, we're going to give Coppers Cove, City of Coppers Cove a shout out. They shared it and let us know that they shared it. This plan welcomed 2 new followers, and as of yesterday, we had 74 survey responses. So it's coming along very well. We've got 2 more public engagement activities that I'll be at Barrow Brewing on April the 4th, and Texas A&M University, they're having a field day, so I'll be out with the college kids that day. So the goal for us is to have 100 survey responses, and I think it's moving along very well. We'll talk through all that. On May 13th, ATAC, that's our Active Transportation Advisory Committee, they're going to recommend adoption, and then it will come before TAC and Policy Board on May 6th and 20th for y'all's hopeful plan adoption. Are there any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 11, regarding public input received through the previous month.
Thank you. I feel like I need to get a drink of water, but I'll wait. We've had some great public comments, a few consultants, a few individuals really expressing interest in our projects and connector routes. I don't know if our regional active transportation plan generated some of the comments. One was a resident over in Harper Heights, and Christina, she did a great job of helping us build a good quality response for this individual that really addressed all of his desired wishes for future connectors. And it seems that y'all had some great ideas in your plan. And then also, this is where we're at right now. We've had 2 comments for the month of March, 0 for the amendment yet. The month is young. And 4 for the plan, with a total of 101 comments for this January, February, and March. And a majority of them had to do with the regional active transportation plan, as you can see right there. Are there any questions about public engagement and the work that we're doing? Thank y'all.
Really appreciate y'all. When you do get these comments, and it involves one of these jurisdictions, how do y'all contact us and get us involved? Thank you very much.
Very welcome.
Anything else? All right, then let's go to item number 12. The balls are waiting for. Mr. Nelson.
All right. Well, I hope you guys have time, because I'm going to rehash everything we talked about with the Basics Act, because that's my main goal today. No, AMPO and the upcoming meetings, of course, are on your screen for April and May. Last week, I was in DC. I was on the Hill Tuesday, met with some of our elected representative staff, just to kind of educate them, answer questions they had about the Basics Act. We met with Speaker Johnson's staff, Congressman Carter's staff, and a couple other, I think Representative Patton, and a couple other staff that I just can't recall at this point in time. It was a lot of discussion and answering questions on Basics Act, kind of like what was discussed here today. It was very cold up there, and I did not take a coat, so take that. And there was a line because it was spring break to do everything. Very cold, so I hardly remember anything. Moving forward, there will be a lot more activity toward reauthorization. AMPO is very aware that there are some questions on the Basics Act, and they stand ready to amend or revise the legislation if needed to move it forward. We want this to be a collaborative effort between all of the law coalition as well as the states. I know ASHO has issued a response to the bill, and so we're just trying to educate on our interpretation of the bill versus, not versus, but in regard to theirs. But, you know, the conversations are continuing. You know, when all of the reauthorization efforts took off, they said, you know, by September, we'll definitely have a bill. After being on the Hill, it sounds like September, we may have a CR. And then hopefully an actual reauthorization early next year. I could be wrong. They could, you know, shake and bake with this thing. I just don't know. But we will keep you, updated on reauthorization as it moves through. We will send the information, the link to the Basics Act toolkit. And if you'd like to reach out to the folks at AMPO, Coady or Ryan, and you don't have their contact information, please reach out to staff. We're happy to be in touch with those folks. The other update I have are our air quality readings, which were 60 and 55 parts per billion. I think that's all I have for my update. Is there anything else, Kendra?
Questions to your right? Item number 13, member comments. Anything you'd like to say for us today?
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
If I may. Everyone, good morning again. Last week, as Uriah mentioned, was a busy week on the Hill on Tuesday and Wednesday. Actually, it's almost like it's another world, so I think Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But there's some bills that affect us infrastructure-wise and transportation that we all probably should reach out to our congressional delegation, the water infrastructure bill, the FEMA bill, and a housing act. I know KTMPO don't directly get involved in housing, but some of the things that discuss actually roundabout connects to transportation and infrastructure as well. That bill actually is crazy as sound in this world. It passed the Senate 89-9 and overwhelmingly bipartisan in the House. The problem is the two chambers are arguing because the Senate took control over it, took out some of the stuff that we may like as cities, and the House actually wants it back in there. So now they're meeting in conference to fix. That involves CDBG funds, and again, most of the bills are dealing with removing unnecessary bureaucracy that I mentioned earlier. So I would make sure that you were able to reach out to our delegation. It'd be great. I did offer an invite to our two reps to come back to the area to look at some of our projects. We was going to highlight brands here. We haven't worked that out just yet. And of course, we was going to invite them to one of the greatest rodeos in the country, the Killeen Rodeo in April. But that's real quick. But I would suggest and strongly encourage y'all to get engaged with them because our words tend to kind of push them over the edge. But if we don't say anything at all, they're not going to care. And we're planning on inviting inviting Hop and Raymond to our Military Communities Council meeting so we can highlight the microtransit and what they're doing on 4th Street. So there are actually other cities that are part of the committee that I chair that are interested in what we're doing. That's all.
Anyone else? All right, call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.